Hoteliers, and I'm the president and CEO of the Greater Miami Beaches Hotel Association. Hope you all are doing well, having a great week. For those of you that are mothers or you all have mothers, I'm happy. I hope that you enjoyed the Mother's Day celebration. It's a very big deal for us. So we're really delighted to host our first. This is going to be our first of many webinars with Integrated Insight. We had the opportunity to meet Stephen and the company several months ago. A wonderful introduction by Andrew Robin-Smith at the GMCBB. He heads up all of the data research and statistics, which was very important to all of our hotels, right, and all of our businesses to kind of get an idea of what's going on, especially in the beginning of COVID and then throughout. So I think we have a really great appreciation for all of the work that Integrated Insight does. I'd just like to share with you some of our upcoming events. On May 19th, we have Littler to Law Firm presents Return to Work in a COVID-19 World, Hospitality Perspective. And that's Littler has been a member of ours for many years, and we appreciate them taking the time. On June 8th, we have Website Accessibility Seminar with Miami Lighthouse for the Blind at 8:00 a.m. We did this with them a few years ago, and it's a very impressive not-for-profit agency that really understands the importance of website accessibility, and it's really a wonderful event for you to attend. And then we just announced this morning on our monthly e-news, we're so excited to celebrate our first annual Travel and Tourism Leader of the Year at the JW Marriott Miami from 5:30 to 7:30. And we're super excited to announce to you all that Bill Talbert, President and CEO of the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau, will be our honoree. We're really looking forward to that. And so now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Stephen Davis, VP of Pricing and Revenue Service, Integrated Insight. Thank you, Stephen, again for joining us today.
Thank you, Wendy. We are very pleased to be here. Thank you very much for having us. So my name is Stephen Davis. I'll jump right in here first with a little bit about me. So I'm the VP of Pricing and Revenue Services here at Integrated Insight. I've been with the company for about 5 years. Prior to that, I was with the Walt Disney Company, where I worked in their forecasting arm of revenue management, forecasting specifically hotel room rates, and demand for properties in Disneyland and in Orlando. So intimately familiar with the workings of hotels and resorts, particularly from the data and revenue management and optimization side. A little bit about Integrated Insight. So what I like to tell people is that we are a small boutique firm with big clients, but we have a number of different lines of businesses, everything from new business strategy, brand new concepts, business optimization for existing businesses. And we do a lot of consumer research, and research is really at the heart of a lot of what we do, because we like to say that we lead with the consumer. And so at our core, what we do is we try to marry the consumer value proposition with the goals of the business, both top line revenue and bottom line profit, to develop holistic strategies. And I'll talk a little bit about how we think about holistic strategies and why that's important. And what we see is that by doing that and thinking about the business holistically as opposed to just in silos, we can really drive value for our clients, often double-digit improvement in revenue and profitability. A little bit about the clients we serve, and then I'll jump right in. So some familiar faces here. We do serve clients throughout the world, though we are primarily within the US and in the leisure and travel space. Miami and the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau. So again, thanks to them for introducing us to Wendy. We've worked hand in hand with them for a couple of years now on their research and understanding who's coming into the Miami market, sizing around the number of visitors, the different behaviors, and all that great information that goes into those annual reports and all the data that they maintain to help you all support your businesses. Another familiar face here in Miami is Jungle Island. So we've been working with Jungle Island for a little over a year now. And I don't know if any of you know, but Curtis Kreider, who is probably many of you are familiar with, is over at Jungle Island now. We've been working on a really cool project as they completely redevelop their experience. I'm really excited about that and excited about that addition to the Miami market.
And Stephen, just to share with you, Curtis is on our executive board, so he's a
Right.
great partner of ours.
Yes. We really like them, and the whole team at Jungle Island is fantastic. I'm really excited for the city of Miami to see how that property ends up. So today we're going to kind of get through 4 pieces. I'm going to do a quick state of the industry. Many of you probably went to the state of the industry breakfast that GMCVB hosted last week. So I'm just going to talk about some specific indicators that are a little bit outside what a lot of people look at, just things that we're looking at to kind of give an indication of where we think things are moving and give you some sense of where the trends are. We're going to talk about pricing and revenue management and promotion principles broadly and how you can apply those and how those really matter, particularly now as you look to optimize the demand that you do have, as you continue to fill gaps and as you continue to wait for that full pent-up demand to hit the market and all of your both domestic and international travel return. We're going to talk about then specifically some revenue generation strategies to make the most out of every guest. So as you have these gaps in demand and you're still trying to get back to where you were pre-COVID, it's critical, and it's always critical, to optimize every single dollar that you can for those who are on property, and make sure that you're really well set. So then when that pent-up demand comes and you're back into normalcy and you're pumping and going, that you know that you're optimized from the revenue point of view and can take full advantage of it. And then we'll talk a little bit about some marketing strategies that we think are really important around driving demand, specifically right now and in today's environment. So just a few things here. One of the things we like to look at is domestic air arrivals. So I know that the domestic travel is returning quicker than the international. But we still got a little ways to go. Domestic travel air arrivals about 20% where they were pre-COVID. So a nice trend, looking to kind of climb back to where they were, hopefully over the next 4 to 6 months. International travel, however, going to be a little bit of a longer lag. We're seeing a similar situation at the Fort Lauderdale airport. And so what you see here is these are domestic and international arrivals from March 20 to March 2021. And then this is the percent change relative to 2019. So similar trend at Fort Lauderdale Airport, which is important for Miami visitation as well, which we know from all of our research and work with GMCVB, but still about 26% below where it was in our most recent data from March. But I do think that that is improving. The international, though, continuing to lag just a bit. Employment in Miami. So we do like to look at the leisure and hospitality employment. This is for Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Palm Beach, kind of broad MSA area. Still down about 20% from where it was pre-COVID. Some interesting employment trends that we've been seeing in the market as we talk to our clients and a lot of our partners in our network is that we see people are having a difficulty hiring people and getting them back in. And so it's going to be really critical as you look to ramp up that you can identify the right amount of labor and get the right amount of labor in place as you move forward. But that's a positive trend there that we've seen in more recent months, which should be a good sign for the hospitality industry within Miami. Some favorable signals from the March RevPAR from the STR data. So just to highlight that things are better than they were in March of last year when everything completely fell off the map. So things moving in the right direction. Miami Beach specifically, just huge RevPAR increases over the prior year. Still down year to date, but again, just another one of those, hey, don't worry as much. Things are getting back to normal. We do see the trend returning to normalcy. And then we like to look at these recovery indexes that GMCVB provides. You can see these out on their website. And what these do is they measure how these performance indicators are doing relative to how they were doing in May of 2020. So a little bit after the impact, but still understanding kind of how are we recovering within the market. This is the most recent here around May dates. And so you can see that air travel in May, about 80% back of where it was in a year ago. Hotels have flattened off a little bit, but almost back where it was. And then dining now back and above and growing. So again, just some other recovery indexes that are showing some of those positive trends in recent months. So as you start to think about the next 4, 6, 8 months of the year, really making sure that you're positioning yourself, knowing that that recovery is coming, the pent-up demand is coming, to make sure we're ready and make sure we're optimized. Another indicator that's a little more forward-looking than having to just look at the historical performance up to date. This one's an interesting one from Kayak. So they do a track of flight search trends. So this is for the US in total, but we do see that search trends for domestic travel are about 25% of where they were 2 years ago. And international travel, though, a similar trend here really across the US, that it's continuing to lag. I do think that as you think about, and we'll talk about a little bit when we think about messages, you probably want to continue to focus a little more on the domestic as you wait for the international to come. I think the US, the speed at which the vaccinations are occurring, a lot of the positive news about vaccinations potentially being approved for those as young as 12 years old, should really get people to start to feel more comfortable about traveling in the near term. However, there's going to continue to be a bit of a lag from the international side. And then these are some interesting search trends for Miami specifically. And so these are Google search trends where we've indexed everything. So where basically January 5th, 2020 equals 100. And these are for searches for flights to Miami and Miami Beach hotels. And what we really love to see that's not only is this ramping up, but actually search trends for Miami Beach hotels are at or above where they were in January of 2020. So a really positive trend there that says not only have things been recovering from what the data we can see, but the indication is that moving forward, things are going to continue to ramp up and return. So the long and short of it is that domestic leisure travel and demand is expected to return quickly, though there's still going to be some challenges in 2021. And so you really want to make sure that you're using every tool in your revenue management toolbox to be successful. You know, there's never going to be a silver bullet to demand generation, but we're going to talk about some proactive strategies that you can put in place to really set you up for success, both in the short term and as you look out in the longer term for that pent-up demand to return. We're going to talk a little bit about just some high-level pricing, promotion, and revenue management principles. So these are pricing principles that we take into every one of our clients, and this is a way that we think specifically around hotels and resorts. And the first step is understanding your capacity and aligning your demand. And so that's understanding, here's what I've got on hand, and here's what I think I'm going to get. What's critical to that is forecasting, both short-term forecasting and long-term forecasting. I realize that right now it's a little bit of a weird time. You don't really have a historical base to go back and look at to see what COVID impacts were in the past, right? So it can be a challenge, but what we've encouraged people to do is to really make sure and do your best guess and your best estimates, try to look at any kind of indicators you have to try to get a handle on that forecast so that you can assess the excess demand that you think you have and then the shortfalls that you have so that you can really go and attack those. And as part of this, it's not just understanding your capacity and your demand, but also understanding where your demand is coming from. So you want to understand the consumer segments that you're going to get. So we talked a little bit about domestic travel, more likely to come in the short term relative to international travel. So you're likely talking more to domestic visitors, but you know, are you talking to families, non-families? Where are they coming from? Florida, other states. So you really want to get your finger on that. And then from that, you want to lead with those consumers. And so think with those consumers and leading with them in mind to understand what are their motivators and their barriers to booking. Right now, the motivators and the barriers are pretty clear. So motivators are people are tired of being in the house. Their vacations got canceled last year, whether that was COVID or due to economic stress. And so they really want to get out and they really want to vacation. We've seen that a lot in the research that we do, that people are anticipating getting out and they're looking forward to it. In terms of barriers, I still think that there's some barriers around safety precautions and COVID-19 concerns. In the US, those are starting to diminish, and there are certainly places where that's more of a concern than others. But everything that we see is still giving an indication that that's important for consumers to have some understanding of the COVID precautions that you're putting in place. And then this last piece is, once you've understand your capacity and your demand, once you get a handle and think about leading with your consumer, then you want to make sure that you're pricing your product and thinking about your revenue strategy holistically. And at the core of that is protecting your core asset. And your core asset really is your room rate, right? And so you want to protect your room rate and optimize and drive as much yield out of that room rate as possible. And so ways you can do that is you can think about leveraging packaging and bundling, which we're going to talk about in just a few minutes, to really increase the value proposition for your guests without having to hit that room rate so hard. And then also having shelf-ready promotions in place with a plan on how you're going to execute them. And so when we talk about promotions, oftentimes discounts, people say, well, I don't want to run a discount. I don't want to be seen as a discounter. And that's certainly true. You never want to train your consumer to expect a discount or wait for a discount before they book. But when you properly execute them, promotions can drive incremental demand. But you have to have the right boundaries in place, or else they run the risk of being dilutive and creating dilution for your rate. And what we mean by dilution is when you give away a discount when you don't need one to incent a booking, thereby you unnecessarily give up a portion of that potential revenue. So to avoid dilution, it's really important to have a proactive promotional plan in place. And this relies very heavily on that first step we talked about with understanding your demand, having a forecast, understanding your pace, keeping a thumb on your pace reports to really understand where you're headed so that you can understand where you need those promotions to land. But having that promotional plan in place helps to prevent you from falling into the temptation of just pulling promotional levers left and right that you haven't necessarily given the proper due diligence and analysis or set up a measurement in place for. So what we encourage people to do is when you create your plan at the beginning of the year, create a promotional plan and a calendar and have an idea of when you think you'll need to execute those discounts. You want to make sure that you have your heavier discounts earlier, right? And then pulling back closer in. And then whether it's a room night discount or whether it's you're maintaining your room rate but giving away some type of a value add, regardless of the type of promotion, there are two specific components every single one of your promotions should have. And this is really important right now, specifically as you look to fill gaps in your demand in the short term, but you don't want to give up revenue from this pent-up demand and this kind of potential that you have in late summer and moving into the end of the year and the beginning of next. So those two things, the first one is a book by date. So the book by date, this is the last day that a consumer can book a promotional offer. Many are probably familiar with this idea, but we really drive this home with our clients and those that we work with because it's really important to have that limited booking window to create urgency. It's a very clear message to consumers. You got to book by this point in time to get this great discount. And so it's a great lever to use to not only fence the product so that you're not giving away unnecessary promotions, but also have a lever to try to drive and convert. The other element that you want to have in every single one of your promotions are travel dates. So every promotion should have a very specific set of travel dates. And typically you do not want to offer a promotion that you can book and travel during the same time. So you typically want to have those travel dates occur after the end of your book buy dates. And those are just the dates when the promotion can be redeemed. And so using those travel dates allows you to fence them. And that could be midweek versus a weekend. or it could be for a whole period of time, such as a traditionally soft period like September, October, when there's a lot of risk around the hurricane season. And so fencing those, really make sure, fencing them, having those book by dates, really make sure that you're driving an incrementality associated with those promotions and avoiding dilution. Another element of those travel dates too, in terms of kind of another level of restriction that you can put in place to really help yourself, is a length of stay requirement. So not allowing people to book a promotion for 1 or maybe even 2 nights, but forcing them into a 3 or 4 night length of stay if they want to take advantage of the promotion, which can really help to elongate that length of stay or force midweek check-ins where you probably need them more than the weekend demand. I think what we've seen in Miami, and probably what most of you have seen, is that weekends are great. They've been blowing and going. A lot of hotels we've talked to are doing really well on weekends. They're getting great rates, which is wonderful, but there's still a little bit of a midweek gap, particularly for those who have historically relied more on group and convention business, which is dragging a bit relative to the leisure, and which will probably continue to drag a bit relative to the leisure, at least compared to historical volumes. And so book by dates, travel dates, and a potential length of stay restriction are going to be really critical as you establish promotions to help you fill the gaps in the short term without having to give up on rate in the long term when that additional pent-up demand and those less price sensitive guests are entering the market and booking close in. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about some specific strategies to make the most out of every guest. So, in times such as this, where you do have a gap, and really in general, period, but specifically right now, you want to make sure that you can get the absolute most out of every single room night on property. So I'll talk about 3 things here and give you some examples. The first one's bundling. Packaging and bundling gives you an excellent opportunity to create a holistic experience with added value. And so you can promote packages with savings messages to the guest. And it also relieves your travelers and relieves your guests a little bit of that decision making once they're in vacation, right? And once they're in the mode. So they've made some decisions up front. It takes a little bit off their plate in terms of itinerary, and it gets them thinking. What you can do is really execute these by trying to go out into the market. And if you don't have already, understanding players in the market who are willing to allow you to sell tickets to their products at a net rate. And then also looking at amenities that you may have on property. So if you're on the beach and you have chair rental services, if there are specific amenities that are really kind of high-end premiums, are there any of those kind of pieces or experiences that you can bundle together to really create a very strong value proposition for your potential guests, and to really highlight that value of staying at your resort because of these bundles that you provide. And what that can also do is it can protect you a little bit on the room rate. And so you use those bundles, you use those other levers to really drive the value proposition without having to give up as much on the room rate and continuing to maintain those high yields. So an example of this could be book 3 nights and receive complimentary transportation from the airport for you and your immediate party, right? So some resorts do offer this shuttle service. Oftentimes it's for a fee, sometimes it's free. But even if it is free, thinking about how can you bundle that experience so that you're providing more than just a room to sleep in at the end of the day. Another one is if you have food and beverage on property, bundling a room night with a limited discount on food and beverage, or what local activities could you then go out and leverage? There's a lot of food tours. There's tours of the Wynwood Walls. So a lot of groups offer these in market, and they'd certainly, most of them, be willing to allow you to sell their ticket at some type of a net rate. And it may not be a huge revenue driver for you, but it can be a really strong value add proposition to help you move room nights. This next one here is around upgradable amenities. And a lot of hotels are doing this, but what we'd encourage you to do is really try to take a look at your portfolio of amenities and see if there's anywhere else that you could get something out of this. Once traveling, some guests are often willing to pay a little more for added perks, late checkout, premium views, higher speed internet access. So think about those that you have, which would really be considered beyond the standard expectation, and where possible, bundle some of them together. The one risk you have around upgradable amenities that we warn people about is you don't want to appear as if you're nickel and diming. So you don't want to appear as if people get on property and they feel like, well, I have to pay $10 for this or $5 for this or $20 for this. But if you can create some really powerful, some really unique upgradable amenities that you can bundle together, many guests are willing to pay for those. And just a minimum $10 on 5 to 10% of your booked rooms could yield quite a bit for you, especially if there's not really an incremental cost associated with those amenities. So an example could be, upgrade your stay package. So selling this when people check into the front desk, hey, would you like to upgrade your stay with higher internet access, a premium view, late checkout, a free alcoholic beverage if you have a lounge, or a snack item if you have a sundry shop there in your lobby, to really move these and help people understand the value of them, and to get some of that incremental revenue so that you're getting absolutely the most out of every single room. And then the last one here is food and beverage. And not every hotel and resort in Miami, I know not all of you have a restaurant on site, not all of you have a lounge or a bar or room service, but many of you have sundry shops, at least in your lobby, and you're doing some type of snacks, Cokes, single beers, prepackaged wines, those types of things. And what we often see is that food and beverage can really fall by the wayside. And we realize it's ancillary, but you don't want it to be ancillary to your strategy. You want to make sure you're optimizing every line of business and every potential revenue driver you have within your portfolio. And so what we tell people is to use some menu engineering pricing principles, whether that's at a sundry shop or whether that's at a bar, to try to optimize that food and beverage revenue. And what I'll do is I'll talk to you about kind of 3 different items. So the first one would be items that you sell quite a bit of and you have a great margin on. So they're low cost items and you sell a lot of them. And the way you identify this is you want to go into your data, you want to leverage your data, understand how are my sales volumes, and then you always want to be tracking and understanding the cost associated with the items you're selling. So when you identify the items these are my high selling, they're low cost, high margin, those are items that you want to make sure you're featuring very prominently, and they're probably good candidates to take incremental pricing on without having to worry too much about a volume impact. The second type of item would be on the opposite side of the spectrum. So those would be items that maybe have a pretty high cost associated with them, and they're pretty low volume. And so they're not doing you any favors to be within your inventory. And so you want to assess for those types of items and see if you can drop them completely, right? To try to eliminate them, replace them with items, or replace them and feature more prominently those items, which are those high volume sellers, high margin items, so that you can really align your product so that you're optimizing that price across your portfolio of products within your food and beverage operation. The last one I'll talk about are items that maybe you don't sell a lot of, but you have really great margins on. And those are ones you want to make sure you're featuring more prominently. If it's a sundry shop, those are the ones that you want to make sure, if you have a lounge or a restaurant, that those are the ones the servers are pushing really, really hard. And I know that many of the resorts have food and beverage directors, and a lot of them are probably engaging in these types of menu engineering principles, but we think it's something that you can really apply beyond just high-end restaurants. You can really apply it across your business. And if menu engineering is something you're interested in more deeply around your business, we have a great article for free on our website around menu engineering principles with examples and kind of an understanding of how that can do great things for your business. So talk a little bit here then about marketing strategies to drive demand, particularly as we're within the COVID right now. So as you look over the next 4 to 6 months and think about how am I going to market myself, a lot of you, I would imagine, are constrained a bit on your marketing budget. So with revenues falling short last year, marketing budgets can really be constrained. And digital platforms can give you a lot of flexibility and allow you to stretch that budget. And so what we've been recommending people do is to really focus on digital channels, whether that's paid or organic, because it allows you to be very hyper targeted and communicate directly with consumers, which is a very powerful asset. But it also gives you flexibility. And so flexibility as consumer sentiment fluctuates about COVID. And so as less people are expecting you to have masks on property, you can change out those assets so that maybe your housekeepers don't have masks in your future, or if your hotel staff doesn't have masks once you feel comfortable making that switch. And so a digital platform allows you to kind of trade those in and out, and it's less permanent than something like a magazine spread or an out-of-home outdoor advertising. Another thing that we think has been really helpful right now, could be really powerful, is looking at a return offer and using a return offer as kind of a marketing lever to go out, use those CRM systems that I'm sure many of you have, to go to speak directly to past guests about your experience, give them a thank you, right? Some discount associated with that to make them feel appreciated and welcomed. The benefit of talking to your past customers is that they're already familiar with your experience, and they're more likely to repeat your experience because they don't have to risk something unfamiliar. So they're familiar with you, they know what it's like, and if they had a good experience, they're more likely to come back there than they are to try to shop around and risk some new kind of a place that they've not been before. And then the last piece here would be communicating safety messages. So we still think that it's important to communicate safety messages. And I think it's a fine line a bit right now, I think, on those, as you look to kind of, as things change and this kind of return to normalcy, we begin to see less mask indoors as the vaccine rollout really has accelerated in the US. We've been fortunate with that. So you want to continue to do these, though, in the interim, in the short term. We're still seeing that a lot of research is coming back saying that, 70% of travelers really want to hear directly from the hotels to see what measures and precautions that you're putting in place. And so we think you should still continue to do that, but be flexible and use those digital strategies to be flexible as you kind of work through that. So this one is really about your channel strategy. So, and this falls somewhere between your revenue optimization and your marketing. So channel strategy, your third party, your OTAs, which I'm sure many of you use on a regular basis. Right now is the time to make sure that you can go in and assess those to ensure that they're optimized. And there's 3 things that we tell you to do to make sure that those channel strategies are optimized to help you both in the short term and to set you up for success as that domestic pent-up demand returns into market. So first, you want to take a look at your commission structure. Third-party channels, it can be a huge boon for business. They're great because they give you a wide breadth, but they also pose some risk. So over time, what we often see with our clients is that third-party agreements get a little unruly. You have different sales directors that come through, they make different agreements. You have guys that throw everything up against the wall and sees what sticks. And there's nothing wrong with having a lot of channel partners and a lot of OTAs. You just want to make sure that your commission structure is aligned so that you have volume requirements associated with those, and that the most lucrative commissions go to those channels that are driving the most volume. And so taking a look at how you have been performing, taking a look at your existing agreements, assessing if there's any that, hey, these guys aren't driving volume for us, we're giving them an amazing net rate, let's back out of this agreement, let's not renew this agreement. And then once you kind of get it aligned and you get a really clear structure and a very specific purposeful strategy to your third-party channel, you want to go in and then review those sales volumes regularly. It's a constant iteration of reviewing those volumes to make sure that your partners are performing in accordance to their agreement. And again, don't be afraid to walk away or come off of commissions for partners who just aren't giving you any volume. If you got somebody that's only giving you 100 room nights a year, walk away from the agreement, give it to somebody else. But establishing that structure and making it very clear and message it to your channel partners. Here's our structure. If you do this, we will do this. It not only aligns the incentives appropriately, but it also gives an incentive for those third-party channels to go out and try to drive more volume, because the more volume they drive, then the more value every room night they sell on your behalf has to their bottom line. And then lastly, what we'd say is to go out and explore some new channels. And if there's any agreements that are in the market that you could go try to take advantage of, there's new travel aggregators are being created daily. And there's a multitude of companies that are regularly looking to provide those value-added perks to employees. And so whether it's a new OTA, or if it's a company that's looking for some kind of a standard discount to provide their employees for room nights and bookings, those are channels you want to go and explore and work them into existing strategy. And so a lot of times these sales channels get overlooked for optimizing revenues. But if you can take the time to really assess that strategy, it could reveal significant opportunities to increase yields and drive incremental demand for you. And now's the time to do that. You want to get it in place, as I've said, as you kind of fill the gaps over the short term. Weekends continue to be great. You want to get those smart promotional pricing strategies in place to try to fill those midweek, any gaps that you have, and then make sure that your third-party channel is working for you and the incentives are aligned so that it works for you and it rewards those who do the best work for you. So one of the last things I'm going to close up with here, and I'll do a brief summary, and then we'll open it up for about 15 minutes of Q&A. If anyone has any questions, we're happy to dive deeper into any of these aspects and discuss further. But I wanted to talk about a case study and a client of ours. One, because it gives us a little bit of warm and fuzzy about a silver lining in a COVID story and a really tough impact that they had and some kind of good outcomes. But also because I believe that some of the insights here are probably directly applicable to many of you, and there's something that you could probably take away for your own business. So we worked with a resort called Grand Traverse Resort and Spa. It's near the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, essentially on Lake Michigan in the Traverse Bay. They're a full-service resort that they have a beautiful big tower. They have on-site food and beverage, they have on-site retail, they have spa facilities, they have multiple golf courses. So they're a full service resort running pretty solid occupancies, positive EBITDA. So things going well for them. And then what we did is we were charged to come in and say, okay, let's no stone left unturned. How can we take the business and optimize it further? As we were working with them, COVID-19 hit. And so we had the ability to work with them kind of through those early COVID impacts, from kind of the February kind of rumblings through the absolute fallout that was April and May. And Grand Traverse always had a significant amount of groups and convention business, as many of you do as well, I'm sure. And so when groups and conventions fell off, there were huge gaps in room night demand, and so they all of a sudden just, hundreds of room nights off the books overnight. And I'm sure that's something that many of you can also associate with and commiserate with. And so without all of that, they really needed to fill as much as they could with leisure business and then optimize rates and optimize holistically their entire strategy at the resort. Fortunately, they were allowed to stay open. Many of the resorts in Michigan had to close because of their kind of remote area that they were in. They were fortunate to be able to stay open. So they were a great option for people whose vacations got canceled. And what they saw are some of the similar trends that I think many of you are seeing in Miami, which is that weekend demand, very strong, and they were able to really push those leisure rates on the weekends. In fact, pushing them above what they had gotten in prior years. and really opening their eyes to say, hey, wow, maybe we have more pricing leverage than we thought. So that was an initial kind of silver lining around, hey, wow, maybe we do have more pricing leverage than we thought initially. Let's go push rates. But the other thing that they found is that they were able to actually get more leisure demand in an absolute volume on some of these weekends relative to prior years because they didn't have any of that group and convention business in house. And so what they were doing is they were actually blocking out higher rated leisure business because they were so bought in to the idea that they needed that group and convention business to support it. And now groups and convention business will continue to be important for many of you as it will be for them. But that learning of, hey, maybe we don't need as much was really insightful. And it really kind of proved a hypothesis that we actually had prior to COVID. And so what we did was to help them through that period and to identify some of those learnings, we said, well, let's come up with a holistic strategy over the course of the next 6 months. Let's create a fenced promotion around select dates to drive midweek demand while you keep those weekends occupied, optimize, push those rack rates close in on the weekends, take advantage of it. But let's create a promotion that is fenced to weekday check-ins. We had a length of stay requirement around it so that it really mostly had to fall within a mid-week date. And then the deepest level of discounts we had further out. And as we approached the end or approached closer in to travel, we reduced that discount and reduced it completely a week or two prior to travel dates. So we created that holistic pricing and promotion strategy for them to execute with all of those kind of key principles that I talked about earlier. And what this did was it was great, and it was able to drive that midweek demand and keep the weekends occupied, optimized. And then we brought in a marketing message with that really leveraged, hey, we're outdoors, we have outdoor recreation, you're not inside, there's things to do, it's safe to be here, which is another great lever that you have in Miami. There's so many wonderful things to do outdoors in Miami, and even further down into Biscayne Bay and the Keys. There's a lot you can talk about and feature to make people feel safe. Those who are still a little bit wary to say, hey, you're coming to Miami, you're going to be outside, you're going to play, and you're going to have a good time. And so this is just kind of a simple case study to say that these principles really do work. And as you kind of try to take a look at your business and you sit back and kind of diagnose what's happened, try to learn from what you did well, and what you did poorly perhaps over the last 12 months, what we would encourage you to do is take a look at how your leisure business came in if you are typically a group and convention house, and try to assess if perhaps you are blocking out some of that leisure business historically and how you may want to change your strategy a little bit going forward, if that could work for you. So we talked about a lot today, but hopefully that gave you guys some insights around how you can think about the business, both in the short term as you continue to try to push those gaps that you have, identifying those gaps because you're aligning your capacity with your demand, doing your best to forecast where you think you're going to be, creating smart promotions that you leverage without having to give up rate in the future. So really making sure that you don't go out too far with those promotions and give up some potential opportunity that you have as part of that pent-up demand. And then taking a look at what you have to leverage, the different assets you have to leverage beyond your room rate to try to build holistic experiences for guests, to try to create value add propositions beyond the room rate. Because if you can get guests thinking about the value and not the price, that's the winning formula. That really is the winning formula, when they're thinking about what they're getting and not what they're paying. And we think that a lot of these principles we've talked about today can really get you there. So it's 11:45. I'll go ahead and pause there. We do have the Q&A open as well as the chat. If there's any questions anyone has, I'm happy to answer them. Anybody? Bahima, are we seeing, oh, here we go. Oh, great. Okay, so this is a really great one. So one of these is, how do you think about the right level of discount for a hotel promotion? And so this is an excellent question, and it really comes down to trying to assess incrementality. And what I mean when I say incrementality is the incremental impact of a promotion that you would drive net of any dilution you're going to create. So the way to do this is you really want to do the math, and it all starts with that first step of aligning that capacity and your demand and having a forecast and understanding, here's where I think I'm going to get, and here's the gap I have. So the simple math you can do is to say, all right, if I'm going to build a promotion, I'm going to be giving this much of a discount for all of my rooms that I sell. If I gave away, say it's $30 on average for all of these rooms, for any room I'm going to sell between now and when I'm going to end the promotion, what's the risk I have around dilution? What is the most revenue that I could potentially be giving up if these people didn't really need a discount to drive their booking? Once you understand your dilution risk, then you can come in and say, all right, if my dilution risk is X, then how many room nights do I need to sell at my forecasted discounted room rate to offset that dilution risk and at least break even or drive, or ideally drive positive value? And you can compare the amount of volume that you need to drive to offset that dilution relative to the amount of volume that you think you're going to get. And so typically what we see is incrementality for broad offers doesn't usually get much above 20–30%. So, if you've got an offer and you build it out and you do the math and it needs 70% incrementality to break even, probably not a good promotion. But if you're looking at a broad offer and it's only about 20, 25, 30, then you could probably get there. Now, if you're using niche offers, so things like a specific military or a specific frontline health worker offer, which we've seen be pretty cool and impactful during COVID as kind of a thank you to all that they've been doing for all of us and the sacrifice that they've been making. Those can tend to be a little more incremental, but 20–30% is probably, you don't want to push much above that if you're doing the math. And again, you really want to be doing the math, and you not only want to say, here's what I need to get, but you want to, after the fact, try to come in and measure that and continually measure your promotions to be sure that you really think you're getting the value out of it. So we have another one here. It's, can you talk a little more about messaging value versus price? Yes. So I think a good example is in terms of bundling. So if you think about how you can associate the value of a bundle as associated to what the actual price is. So if you can create a bundle of items, it's my room rate, it's a discount on a meal, and it's a experience, or it's a day of chair rentals on the beach, whatever that is. And then you talk about the value specifically for that. It's a 40% off. It's a $40 savings. You want to be very explicit about the discounted value associated with that, and without having to make the guest do the math. You want to do the math for them and say, hey, this is a great value. You're saving $40, $50, or you're saving 20% by implementing this. It's typically, you're getting this free chair rental, which is typically, $100 a day or whatever that is. You want to be very explicit about what they're getting and really trying to focus on the value proposition of the experience that you're offering, or the packaged experience that you're offering, as opposed to it's $350 a night. So really doing the math for the consumer. Here's how much you're saving. A lot of times talking in terms of volume, actual dollar volume, and discount can be really helpful, but keeping them focused on that proposition, the value they're getting out of it, as opposed to the actual price point they're paying. Any others? So if there's no other questions, I'll toss it back over to Wendy and team. But what I'll say is, our contact information is here. We do work, as we said, a lot in the Miami market. We have a lot of partners down there and throughout the Florida, and really throughout Florida, Central Florida, in terms of resorts and hotels. So if you've got any questions for us, you'd like to reach out, we're always willing to have a conversation. And we really, again, I really appreciate your time and tuning in and allowing us to come in and talk a little bit about what we can bring to the table.
Thank you so much, Stephen. We really appreciate you doing this presentation for us and our members. And this webinar is being recorded, will be shared along with the deck. And if anybody has any other questions, again, as Stephen said, please reach out to them or reach out to us and we'll put you in contact with them. Thank you again, Stephen, and to everyone who attended the webinar. Hope you guys have a great week. Thank you.
Excellent. See you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Bye.